Hello guys, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be going over what's been added to the dev server with a focus on top tier air. So we've got a couple of F-18s, we've got the Su-30, a few interesting things. So I will let you know a bit about the aircraft and then I'll talk a bit about where they're going to fit into the meta. Obviously this is all dev server stuff, so it's subject to change and this is just my opinion. And while rare, I have been known to be wrong in the past. So we're going to start with the FA-18A for the USA at 12.3. It's got pretty good engines, good acceleration. The armament is pretty normal for this battle rating. It's got AIM-7F and AIM-9L. Nothing really to write home about in the armament department. The maneuverability is pretty good, but the top speed is quite average. And I'm going to have footage playing in the background, so you might be able to see that it turns pretty well. Even at high speed, it's able to pull quite a lot of AOA. It's still lacking in some places. It doesn't have a HMD, so you will need to get your nose on target. And we have a new feature here, this little button at the bottom. It's the AOA limiter. So far, it's only on the new planes that have been added, but they said in the dev server that some of the other planes that have them in real life will be getting them, such as the F-16. So this should be quite a big buff for the F-16 if that goes through. I will say though, these planes that have the AOA limiter and the ability to turn it off, when it is off, especially at medium speed, they pull an insane amount of AOA. So expert crew will be mandatory if you want to use this, because as these are test flights, they aren't expert crews, so you can see how fast the pilot passes out. Obviously, even without the AOA limiter, you're still limited by the speed you're traveling at and the ability to actually deflect the control surfaces. You're still going to have compression at high speed, and that's something you're going to have to deal with, unless you're in the Su-30, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Honestly, I think the FA-18 is going to be fairly solid for the US at 12.3. It's probably going to play quite similarly to the F-20 in the respect that it's kind of like a big boy F-5, right? It turns pretty well. It's got decent engines. It's going to play a lot like the F-20 in these regards, and it has a similar armament as well. Next up, we have the FA-18C Early. It's going to be a new premium in the US tech tree at 12.7. It says 13.0 on the dev server at the moment, but on the dev stream, they did say it will be 12.7 on release. This thing gets the new AIM-7P with data link and quite a lot of options for CAS. As you can imagine, it's the FA-18, the A is attacker, so you're going to have a lot of bombs, guided ordnance, things like that. It'll be a great CAS plane. So here we're just going to demonstrate the new AIM-7P. I'm going to start by just firing off a missile, and you'll see that I'm going to lose lock for quite some time intentionally. And the missile's going to fly along using its inertial guidance, basically where it last thinks that the plane is going to be. And it will continue to follow the inertial guidance until you relock. So as you can see, we'll relock and then we'll get the kill. So in terms of features, it's going to behave a lot like the Soviet R-27. Probably the base version, the R-27R, it's going to be very similar in capability to that. Obviously, it's not going to be as energetic as the Soviet counterpart. It's not going to have quite as much speed or pull. But in terms of features, inertial guidance, data link, being able to lose lock and then relock and get the kill, things like that, it's basically the same. Other than that, not really much new about the FA-18C. We're talking strictly in terms of air here. I'm not going to go into the ground options because this isn't really a full review. This is more of a first impressions from the dev server. And in a lot of ways, it behaves very similarly to the FA-18A at 12.3. The only real difference is going to be the bump in ordnance. The AIM-7P is obviously significantly better than the AIM-7F. So it merits a higher battle rating, which I think is fair. As of yet, with the AOA limiter as well as the new ordnance like the AIM-7P, they aren't on any other aircraft yet on the dev server. Again, things might change. Things definitely will change. They've already said that it will with the AOA limiter. As to whether the F-14 is going to get the AIM-7P, for example, they haven't really gone too much into that. So we'll have to wait and find out. Lastly, in the US tree, we have the A-18C Late at 14.0. This thing is going to be the US's new meta jet at top tier. You can carry 10 AMRAAMs with 2 AIM-9Ms. That's right, 10 of these things. And as you'll see a bit later with the Su-30, which also carries a lot of missiles, if you think AMRAAM spam RAM at top tier as bad as it is, you ain't seen nothing yet. You also do have the option to carry just 6 AMRAAMs and 6 AIM-9Ms, trading them 1 for 1. I personally don't see really why you would want to do that. The AMRAAM is better than the AIM-9M in every regard, in my personal opinion, except for maybe the fact the AIM-9M has a smokeless motor, but yeah. Again, this plane has a huge variety of guided ordnance for CAS. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it has pretty much everything you'd want from the US tech tree. A short demonstration here, you can really see how crazy the turn performance is on this thing without the AOA limiter. So honestly, this is kind of what the US was lacking. They had the F-15E. This obviously had great acceleration. It could climb really well. It had a lot of missiles. But what it really lacked was the maneuverability that the F-18 is going to bring. Now, how useful that is in reality, yeah, I'm not so sure. It'll probably help you dodge some Fox 3s. But yeah, there isn't, at least the way I play top tier, there isn't really a whole lot of dogfighting going on. It's all missiles at this point. So yeah. Also, when it comes to the F-18, the last F-18 that's going to be added is in the Swedish tech tree for Finland. Now, this is the F-18C, not the F-A-18. The Finnish variant is a pure air superiority fighter with no ground options whatsoever. Some Sweden enjoyers might be a bit disappointed by that, but yeah, there are other options in the Swedish tech tree, so it's not the end of the world. But obviously having the FA-18 with its wide variety of options is always going to be an improvement. But one thing I will say about this variant is it's going to be way easier to grind, because all those bombs, rockets, and various other things that the FA-18 carries, this being an air superiority fighter, you don't have to worry about that. So it's actually much quicker to grind out to the AMRAAMs and carry your massive load into battle. Next up, and what a lot of people are looking forward to, the Russian Su-30SM in the Soviet tech tree at 14.0. Like a lot of the SU series, this is still quite a big plane. It does have fully thrust vectoring engines, and you're going to see the absolute ridiculous amount of agility this plane has shortly. While we're in the hangar, I'll just show you the ordnance. So it's got the R77-1, the R73, and obviously all of the R27 family. But the R77-1 is a huge upgrade over the base R77. It's pretty much the same. It just has a lot more energy. It's still not really going to compete with AMRAAM by the looks of it, but it's still a big improvement over what the Soviets had before. And yes, you can carry 14 of the things. Well, not 14 R77, but in total you can carry 14 missiles, which is truly absurd. You're probably not going to run the full amount of R77s that you want, right? Because you're probably going to want a couple of R73s for close in. You're probably going to want to carry a pair of R27 ET because they offer a somewhat unique option when it comes to top tier. As far as I'm aware, it's the only very long-range infrared missile in the game, right? It's just an R27ER, but it has a thermal head, so you can kind of surprise people pretty well with these things. I've had a lot of success with the ET, so I'll definitely be running a pair. But you can only run 2, unfortunately. It also has every good ordnance option the Soviet tech tree has to offer, whether it's the Ha-38s, whether it's the Ha-29s, whether it's any bomb, any rocket, you name it, it has it. And it has a great targeting pod to go with it as well. Now, the AOA limiter kind of keeps this thing in check. It still has great turn performance. The performance is amazing in all respects in terms of agility. But when you flick that switch and turn off the limiter, it's truly absurd. You can literally do a 180 and be still traveling in the other direction. As you'll see in the clip, you do a 180 and you're basically flying backwards because you've done the 180 so fast. And honestly, even if you have a bit of altitude, you can recover from this surprisingly easily. You pop full flaps, pitch down, and yeah, if you have a bit of altitude, you can still get out of this without too many problems. How useful that's going to be in reality is a bit of a question mark, right? Obviously, there are going to be clips of people doing crazy shit, but in a practical sense, I'm not so certain. Maybe you can do some fancy tricks to help you dodge some missiles, but yeah, I'm not too sure how useful this is in game. Other than that, we just have a few things to clean up. We have the Tornado MLU Ret 8 for Italy. This is very incomplete on the dev server, so not too much to say about it, but it's just another Tornado. It'll have, obviously, a lot of ground options, but yeah, not too much to speak about. Probably going to be good CAS. Then we have the Netz Premium, which is pretty much identical to the Tech Tree Netz, but it has 3 times as many countermeasures. Not really a whole lot to say, but it's there if you want it. I don't really see myself enjoying a plane at 12.7 that only has heat seekers and no IRCCM at that. I personally think that's a hard sell, but I hear some people really enjoy playing the Netz, so all the power to you if you enjoy playing it. Lastly, there's the J11B in the Chinese tech tree. This is basically a copy-paste of the first J11, as far as I'm aware. It's Chineseified. In real life, the reason for this upgrade was that China wanted to reduce their dependence on Russia for aircraft parts and the like. So this carries the PL-12 instead of the R-77 export variant, which the Chinese first J11 carries. PL-12 is basically Chinese AMRAAM, so this is quite a big upgrade, honestly. Obviously, in terms of meta, it's probably fine. I can see reasons why you would run it. Yeah, I can see it having a place. As well, the Su-30, obviously it's going to be uncontested the only plane worth playing at top tier in the Soviet tree. Unless you're going for those like long-range yeet base bombs with the Groms in the Su-34. But the Su-30 can also carry the Grom, so I really think the Su-30 is going to make the Soviet tree a competitive, valuable grind again. They might be able to compete with the Mika with the amount of energy that they have, although I'm going to wait until we see these things in game before I make too many judgments. Again, all of this is just my first impression from what I've seen on the dev server. My opinion and everything that I've shown you is subject to change. Just bear that in mind. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to this patch. I think it's going to be quite fun. There's a lot of stuff to grind. I'm definitely looking forward to grinding out the FA-18 and the Su-30 and playing around with them in top tier. So thank you for coming, guys. That's been my first impressions. Remember to smash that like button and subscribe. And thank you for coming.